What's up, sons? It's Blind Rod with Son of a Tech once again, and I have a full list of RTX supported games from Nvidia that we're going to go over right now. And what exactly does RTX support mean right now? Because there's a little bit of confusion, especially if you watch the keynote speech. It borderline, in some people's opinion, it's deception, at least from that speech. But if you do follow Nvidia and what they've been posting about the cards, you do get a better idea. We're going to try to clear some of that up, and then we're just going to go over what games, are going to actually support it and what portions of it they're going to support right after this. Okay, so to say a game is RTX supported doesn't actually mean it supports ray tracing, which is a huge deal if we're talking about naming your card RTX, and then when you do the little demo showing RTX on and RTX off. In their release of supported games, especially initially, they failed to really clarify which ones actually supported ray tracing and which ones supported another feature they showed off called DLSS. So what is DLSS? We kind of need to know that. That's actually a form of anti-aliasing or supersampling that stands for deep learning supersampling. And it actually improves frame rate over traditional anti-aliasing or supersampling. So if you have like TXAA on right now and you're trying to run it with that on, it's going to actually have quite a bit poorer performance than, of course, the DLSS. But you have to keep in mind that there's a caveat to that as well, and that's that DLSS is going to be super reliant on the game having been tested previously for anti-aliasing before it actually gets implemented into the driver to get those performance increases, because it's actually an AI of sorts, and because it's an AI, it's going to be an ever learning process, and therefore on initial launch it might not even do anything for you right out of the box as far as performance gains. Now, Nvidia released a chart which we can throw up here that was showing essentially DLSS on and how much the performance increased up to 2 times compared to traditional AA in 4K gaming. And then I went, who enables anti-aliasing in 4K? Because the honest truth is, I turn AA off when I play in 4K, and even at sometimes at 1440p. The only time when I rely on anti-aliasing at all is typically in the 1080p resolution, and we didn't get those numbers, and we also didn't get anything but what Nvidia offered us, which was 1 to 2 times improvement in the frame rate at 4K only, and only across a few games. And so that kind of leaves the question of how does it perform at 1080p? Do we really need it at 4K? Because if I'm running a 4K 27-inch monitor, which seems to be the most popular platform at 4K right now, if people are even playing in 4K, how relevant is it, right? I'm probably not going to turn it on, so I wouldn't even see the performance decrease with traditional AA, at least at 4K. In the example they posted, that's about it. That's my thoughts on DLSS as it stands now and the performance improvement. Now, they did show the performance improvements over the 1080 Ti in 4K for the 2080s or the 2000 series, and it does look like you are getting a decent performance gain, but the metrics are nothing I can really extrapolate into any sort of scientific data for you to really interpret. So I apologize for that. As it comes, I will show it off to you. Now, the actual form of anti-aliasing does look really, really good, and it does look really accurate compared to even the older, underperforming types of anti-aliasing. However, there's only going to be a few titles that will support it. The most important part that people are interested in as far as visual fidelity does seem to be showing that it has a significant performance decrease. Now, we don't know and we can't verify what the resolution was at, but there was a demo from Shadow of the Tomb Raider, excuse me, that a source basically released and said it was at 1080p, and we were seeing frame rates between 30 and 50 FPS, supposedly on a 2080, which I also can't really verify because you can't really see much other than the screen that he showed off. So The only thing that we can determine there is that there is a performance decrease as it stands today on an unreleased game with an unreleased driver with an unreleased GPU. So, you know, at that point, unfortunately, I don't want to defend Nvidia here and say it's going to perform perfectly when it comes out, but I do want to say, like, we don't actually know at this point, right? So let's hold off for final judgment, and let's just talk about from the gamer's perspective, just like we would if a new console was coming out. What games are coming out for it? What does it support? Because if you're going to go out and buy an Xbox One right now, the argument is there's not enough exclusive titles on it. And I think, you know, after taking a look at this list, you can decide if there's enough titles to support it that you want to actually invest in the platform. Because at this point, that's what it is. It's a platform. Consider this purchase more like a console than just a GPU upgrade. The first game, which you guys probably saw, was Battlefield 5. And if you guys don't know what Battlefield 5 is, I confused on how you ended up on this video. It's a first-person shooter from EA, and they are going to be supporting the ray tracing portion of the RTX. The next game is Assetto Corsa Competizione. I'm not sure if I got that right. Now, I've dabbled in that game, in that series a little bit, but I haven't played it enough to really get into it. But it is a car racing game, and because of that, RTX could come out implemented pretty well there. It is also, as far as I'm aware, already available for purchase. However, I don't think the RTX support is there yet, but that will be another ray tracing support of the game. The next game is Control, which is one I'm very excited about, and if you're a fan of course, something like the Alan Wake series and so on, I think you will be as well. A Quantum Break, for example. And this one is probably if I had to pick a game and a developer that was going to do the most with ray tracing, I would pick this game, Control. So I think it will be at the forefront of actually making it valuable from a gameplay perspective. Next we have Enlisted, which I have never played and appears to be some sort of first-person MMO by its descriptor. And let me know what you guys think about that game in the description below, and that has ray tracing support. Keep in mind that we're talking about ray tracing support, not DLSS yet. Next is Justice, which I could find no record of anywhere, and I have no idea what it is. Next we have Atomic Heart, which we have a trailer for, and I'm not really too clear on what it does, other than, as far as I can tell, it's you know, it's a game that supports ray tracing or will support it. JX3 as well, not really too clear. So from my perspective, I'm starting to lose interest in a lot of these titles. Next, we do have MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries, and MechWarrior is one of those games that could be really great or could fall on its face pretty easy, especially this late in the series. They've had some good releases and some pretty meh releases. So depending on how they handle it, it could be a good title for ray tracing, or it could be awful, and I just don't know yet. We do have a bigger game here, which is awesome, Metro Exodus, and they are, well, that title's great, and everybody loves Metro, right? I mean, I do. So hopefully, and it's on that level of graphic fidelity of, like, they're always able to utilize futuristic features on GPUs that isn't implemented yet, so they have a really good chance at using ray tracing to its fullest potential. At the same time, they can pretty much also allow you to tank your FPS if that's what you prefer, because they seem to be able to do that in all of their titles. And then 10 years later, you get a brand new GPU and you go run the old Metro 2033 and you're like, yes, I can run it with max settings. So there's that. I think they'll be able to implement it to what performance level, and that's really up in the air as far as I can tell. There was also Project DH, and it's from DevCat Studios, and I'm not really too clear on it, on everything that's going on with it. If I'm like completely off base with some of these titles and you guys are like super waiting on this title, let me know what I'm missing out on in the comment section, of course. And then finally, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which we talked at length about in the beginning, and you can basically see that they're using it and they are getting better and better with showing off what they're able to do with ray tracing in games with Shadow of the Tomb Raider. That being said, of course, there's the question on performance for it. So it's the big one that's bringing up most of the questions. The interesting thing is Shadow of the Tomb Raider has already been shown on Xbox One X to run at 1080p 60 FPS, and we don't know exactly what settings, but I would assume medium to high, pick and choose somewhere in between there. And on the Xbox One X, 4K 30. And all they really compromised as far as the reviews I saw, or the overviews and the analysis of it, was the resolution. They didn't compromise the actual in-game like graphics settings. So it's gonna be one of those titles that should be super optimized, and if they can't get it optimized for ray tracing, then I would say we probably have a problem once that launches. Now, the other part of RTX support, which got a lot of people confused, is the DLSS, which we talked about earlier. We're going to go through the list of these games, and a majority of them you will notice are competitive shooters. And this is actually going to be a theme through them because it does, in all honesty, make the most sense to put the performance enhancing version of anti-aliasing into one of these titles. For example, we have Ark Survival Evolved, which also has a new expansion coming out soon. So I would assume the support for DLSS will be right around that expansion time. We have a game called Atomic, which I have not played. And then moving from there, we have Dauntless. Dauntless is one that I've been playing quite a bit of. It was kind of like the PC gamers version of Monster Hunter World, except not really. It's just kind of what it got nicknamed with. It has a very nice artistic feel to it, and adding on to it with some better performance would be good because of the artistic style. Having quite a bit of jaggies, cleaning that up with an anti-aliasing has been something I've done plenty in the past, and it has very wonky 4K support at this point. So hopefully this will also force them to support 4K better. That being said, we also have Final Fantasy 15, and this was one that people got confused on and thought that it was going to support the ray tracing function, but as of right now, from Nvidia, we're only going to be seeing the DLSS support, and we already knew that they were kind of heavy with the Nvidia favoring graphics, so it's not really a surprise that they're going to be enabling this. The next is Fractured Lands, and then Hitman 2, which is actually quite a bit of a surprise that it's going to be supporting it. However, Hitman's always been one that's run better on AMD, and this would basically probably just help it get back on par for, you know, the price to performance in Hitman 2 specifically. And I can go into why that is in another video. I do a lot of performance reviews on this channel. Definitely check out those videos, and you'll see why I kind of will understand what performs better on AMD GPU wise and so on. And we're going to be doing one with Monster Hunter World here soon too, so if you're interested in that, definitely hit the sub and the notification button. We have Islands of 9 also coming out with support for DLSS, Justice, JX3, which we already mentioned, Mech Warrior, which we already mentioned, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is the next big one. So PlayerUnknown's Battleground has always had performance issues. My biggest problem with PUBG having support for DLSS is not so much on Nvidia's side. I'm not frustrated with Nvidia here. I'm more frustrated with the devs for this partnership. I feel like they might even, if there was a dev that was going to accept money to enable a feature, it would be this developer. And seeing that they take so long to get basic stuff like vaulting taken care of and stuff for the community, it just kind of irks me that's what they're going to decide to focus on with all of their dev time, as opposed to fixing stuff that the community needs fixed. So that's my 2 cents for whatever it's worth on PUBG. We also have Remnant from the Ashes, Serious Sam 4, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, The Forge Arena, and another broken ass game, We Happy Few. Which somehow I avoided buying because I was disappointed with the initial launch of it being some survival game that I did not like, and I was wanting the story, long story on that one. I really love the setting of it, but it's broken as all hell, and I don't want to ruin any potential of it being good later on for me if they actually get it all resolved. But once again, that to me is one of those PUBG stories of why enable this in a game that you can't get fixed first. You are allocating developing resources to the wrong direction, and that really bugs me. And I would put that on the devs or the developers of We Happy Few. Not so much on to Nvidia, unless we dig down later and we find that Nvidia is paying these studios to enable these features, and then we're going to have a problem. Let me know what you guys think about the amount of games and which games are going to be supporting RTX and which ones are going to specifically support ray tracing versus just DLSS. If I'm looking at this as a console investment, some of these games have already been out, so I kind of automatically watch those games. And I see a few really big ones. I see Control, which for me is the one I'm most excited about. I see Battlefield 5, which is what I would attribute to a third-party title that can be played on, well, all of these are on multiple systems. You know, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and I can't believe I'm forgetting all of them already. Let me pull this up. It was Shadow of the Tomb Raider and Metro Exodus. So I see four games that I would want to invest in this platform for, right? So if I'm talking about this from the perspective of if I'm going out to buy a console, how many games do I get out of it? And then how much play time do I get out of those games? And does my dollar per hour actually add up to something worth anything? So if you're talking about Battlefield 5, and let's be honest, you're not going to enable ray tracing in multiplayer. Let's just blow that out of the water. It's not going to happen. You typically, if you're playing a competitive shooter, you turn off shadows, you turn off those types of features. Go watch any how-to video on any competitive PC shooter, and that's what you're going to do. So wash out any of the time you're going to be spending in the multiplayer for Battlefield, because that's not going to count. That's not something you're going to want to turn on ray tracing for. So single player, 8 hours, right? You got Shadow of the Tomb Raider, 20 hours at max. So let's just say we're at 30 hours. Metro, another 20, let's say 50 hours. And then Control, I'd say another 20. So you're at 70 hours, and extrapolate that across, you know, a minimum of, you know, what would that be? A $600 purchase, and, you know, plus the purchase of the games, and you're, if you can get close to minimum wage, at least my rule, $10 an hour, between $7.25 and $10 an hour, then, you know, maybe I can justify that. At this point, you're talking about just for the 4 games, $200 plus the cheapest GPU currently that we can actually buy it for is $600. So that's $800 divided by 70 hours. It falls into there, but it's on that kind of borderline where the value is questionable. And that's just from, like I said, a console buying perspective. Especially if you consider that I can still play those games on all the other platforms I already own. So I'm literally buying it for one feature within those games, which then just kind of blows the value out of the water for me. But we'll see if they can make it work and we get other performing features out of it, then that'll be awesome. Let me know what you guys think. Once again, let me know what games you're excited for. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next Tuesday.